Hello, Andrew here. This time our update is about sinners, or rather the community of sinners that was the Catholic Student Society at the University of Cape Town. The chaplaincy, Kolbe House, situated just below the university on the slopes of Devil's Peak in Rondebosch, was home to about 10 to 15 Catholic students. And it was a very active community of which Alexander was not only a committee member but also someone who was fairly active in organizing all sorts of events. He was committed to his community, which was a very tightly knit one, modelled itself on the early Christians, and was perhaps one of the most left-wing organizations on white university campuses in the country. Alexander was particularly concerned about whether his new girlfriend, Aviva, would be accepted in his community, given that they were very active Catholics and she was Jewish. So when Aviva comes to visit for the first time, he sees her approaching, walking up the long driveway through terrace gardens, and the beauty of the surroundings, something that she stops to admire when she bumps into the priest who is walking, doing his rounds, saying his vespers in the gardens at the time. And they halt on the driveway. He has his back to the house from which Alexander exits, and he moves towards them. And this is where our reading starts this time. Aviva noticed him before the priest did. He winked at her, eliciting that smile again, the welcoming grin and the fragile frown. "Good evening, Father," he called to the broad back, just as it slowly turned to allow its owner to see who it was that the girl had been smiling at. "Hi, Aviva," Alexander called out as he edged alongside the chaplain and stopped at her side. "Alex," Father Kelly smiled, "it is you. I see you two already know each other." "Yeah, Father," Alexander muttered as he lowered his eyes to study the paving on which they were standing. "We know each other. In fact, we know each other quite well," Alexander heard Aviva tell the chaplain as she reached for his hand and tiptoed to kiss his cheek. Alexander studied the paving more intently as he felt Aviva squeeze his hand and heard Father Kelly guffaw. "And has Aviva told you that she is Jewish, Alex?" the older man inquired. "Oh, yeah, Father." Alexander raised his eyes to the priest's face, and then, glancing sideways at the girl, Aviva made a point about mentioning that at the very outset. So I told her that she would feel very much at home here. Because Jesus our God was a Jew from the time when he was born until the day on which he died. Father Kelly chuckled. "Yes, Aviva has also reminded me of that. And this is the reason why she feels that she is in good company." "You're an excellent student, Father," Aviva chimed in. Alexander was astounded. Had she just said that to the priest? You put us students all to shame, Father. Aviva smiled sweetly at him. If only we could remember everything as well as you do, we would be much better students. Alexander stared at his girlfriend, for so he was beginning to consider her, in utter amazement. You're stroppy, he thought. Father Kelly turned to him. You're a lucky man, Alex. He smiled at the youth. To have such a smart, pleasant, and attractive companion. Almost speechless, Alexander finally managed to mumble, Yeah, I am, Father. His grimace of stunned amazement masquerading as a smile until he noticed Aviva poke her tongue at him from behind the chaplain's back. In response, his face broke into a broad grin and he enthusiastically nodded his agreement. So Aviva is welcome here at Kolbe House, Father, even though she is Jewish? Alexander wanted certainty on this point from the new student chaplain. But of course, my son, Father Kelly replied. We welcome everyone here just as Jesus did in his day, even sinners and non-believers. Perhaps I should say, especially sinners. He chuckled and then added, and as we are all sinners, we should all feel at home here. Alexander found himself drawn to this line of reasoning, although he was perceptive enough to recognize the obvious lacuna. So then, how do we distinguish between Christians and non-believers, Father? Surely there must be some way of doing this. Otherwise, what is the point? Aviva was clearly intrigued because she was closely following the interaction. Father Kelly paused, looked at the young couple in silence, and then spoke. You will be able to tell them by their fruits. These are not my words or those of any of Jesus' apostles. This is what the Lord said during the Sermon on the Mount, while he was providing advice on how to distinguish between true and false disciples. You recall that Father Graham also mentioned this quote during the residents' gathering last week, Alexander? Yeah, Father. I remember, but Alexander seemed to be following a scent. Are you suggesting that someone who professes faith in Christ may not in fact be a Christian if they do not act as a Christian and do God's will? Is that correct? Perhaps that is going too far, Alex. Father Kelly looked at him patiently. It may be more appropriate to call that person a sinner just like the rest of us. Someone who is therefore as welcome as the rest of us. So, by the same token, Father, Alexander leapt at the opportunity. Could we not conclude that a non-believer who does act as a Christian would have as much right to be part of our community of sinners as a believer who does not? We appear to have come full circle, Alex. Father Kelly chuckled again. You seem to have demonstrated the truth of the matter quite successfully. As all of us are sinners, we should all feel at home here. A moment of silence followed. Although Alexander later thought that he should have felt a right chump at this point, he was more relieved than anything else. This old priest was not only smart, he also seemed to share some of the core values of the community into which he too was in the process of being accepted. Shall we sinners then go inside and join our fellow sinners? It was Aviva who broke the silence, and her mirth was undisguised. Alexander's jaw dropped as he turned to her. Have you just called the priest a sinner? And that was our reading. I hope you enjoy this update, and I look forward to bringing you the next one. Until then,